Story 1. The House in the Woods. The sky was ominously overcast, a thick layer of clouds casting an eerie gloom over the school as the day dragged on. It was Friday, and with the weekend approaching, the mood was cheerful among the students, except for me and my friends. We had heard through the grapevine that a fire drill had been scheduled for third period, and we had plans that didn't involve standing in the cold, listening to the teacher call out names. As soon as the shrill alarm sounded, we exchanged knowing glances. This was our signal. We dashed out of the classroom, ignoring the crowd of students heading for the main entrance, and instead headed toward the back of the school. The plan was simple: sneak out to the watering hole behind the school near the woods, light a fire, and enjoy the thrill of skipping the drill. We squeezed through a narrow gap between the tennis court and a line of bushes, emerging at the edge of the woods where the manhole was out of sight. The manhole was nothing more than a large, shallow hole in the ground, surrounded by trees and bushes. It was a favorite hangout for the more rebellious students, a place where people smoked, drank, and occasionally lit bonfires. But today, the air was thick with something other than the expectation of mischief. As we sat down, ready to smoke, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The dark clouds overhead seemed to weigh us down, and the wind carried a chill that cut through our clothes. My friend Jack pulled out his pipe and grinder, and we began to pass them around, but my mind was elsewhere. That's when I noticed something. A face half hidden, half revealed in the bushes at the edge of the woods. It was just a glimpse, a fleeting image that could easily be played upon by my imagination. I blinked, looked back, but the face was gone. I nudged my friends and pointed to where I had seen it, but they just laughed, dismissing it as smoke-induced pain. Still, the unease gnawed at me, growing stronger with each passing moment. We finished our cigarettes, and my friends decided they wanted to explore the old house further into the woods. I hesitated, fear rising within me. The air grew heavier, thick with the promise of rain, and I could feel the first drops beginning to fall. But I didn't want to be a coward, so I followed them, my heart pounding in my chest. The house loomed before us, larger and more dilapidated than I remembered. It was a relic of a bygone era, abandoned by the school and left to rot. The door was slightly ajar, and Jack pushed it open with a creak that sent shivers down my inside. The darkness was almost tangible, swallowing what little light was filtering through the broken windows. The air was thick with the smell of damp wood and something else, something rotten. As we stepped inside, the floor groaned under our weight, and that was when we heard it, a wet, screeching sound followed by a low, raspy moan. In the corner of the room, barely visible in the dim light, was the silhouette of a person. We froze, our breaths catching in our throats. The figure was tall, impossibly tall, and as it shifted, we caught a glimpse of its face, if you could call it that. The skin was stretched and distorted, one side of its face lower than the other, as if it had melted and solidified it into that grotesque shape. One eye was swollen shut, while the other bulged unnaturally from its socket. None of us screamed. We didn't have time. We turned and ran, dashing through the door and sprinting toward the school. But as we reached the edge of the woods, I glanced back, and that was when the lightning struck. For a split second, the entire scene was illuminated in blinding white light, and there, standing in the window of the hut, was that figure, face pressed against the glass, looking at us with that single bulging eye. We didn't stop running until we were back in the safety of the school grounds. our hearts pounding in our chests. We huddled together, shivering not from the cold, but from the terror that clung to us like a second skin. No one said anything as we walked home, and we agreed never to speak of what we'd seen. But that image, that face in the window, haunted my dreams for years afterward. Story 2. The Basement Corridor. Kyle and I were notorious for not following the rules. We loved exploring the unknown, and our high school was rife with rumors that piqued our curiosity. The most intriguing of these was about a door that led to a mysterious hallway underneath the school. It was a place that seemed to be accessible only during fire drills, when every door in the school was left open. The idea of venturing down there was too good to pass up, and we quickly made a pact to explore it the next time the fire alarm went off. That opportunity came sooner than we expected. The shrill sound of the fire alarm interrupted the monotony of the study hall, and we knew this was the moment. While everyone else was heading out of the classroom and into the hallway, Kyle and I snuck into the bathroom near the door in question without anyone noticing. We hid in one of the doorways, waiting until the last student had left and the hallways were quiet. My heart was pounding, but it wasn't fear. It was the thrill of doing something forbidden. We crept down the stairs, each step echoing ominously in the cramped space. The air grew colder as we went deeper, and the smell of damp earth and mildew grew stronger. At the bottom of the stairs, we found ourselves in a narrow, dark hallway. The flickering fluorescent lights cast strange shadows on the dirty walls, which were peeling and cracking, revealing the concrete underneath. It was as if we had entered a part of the school that had been forgotten for decades. At the end of the hall was another door, older and more shabby than the last. The wood was cracked, the paint peeling and fading. Kyle hesitated, his hand hovering over the rusty knob. "Are you sure?" he whispered, suddenly nervous. Kyle nodded, though his hands were shaking. "Yeah, we've come this far." He turned the knob, and the door creaked open, revealing a small windowless room. In the middle of the room was an old, dusty chair, and in front of it was an old television. It was one of those old models with a dial and a wood-paneled front, the kind you'd expect to find in your grandparents' basement. The TV was on, but the screen was static, casting a faint, flickering light across the room. A low hum came from the TV, a sound that made my skin crawl. There was something unsettling about the whole thing, like we'd stepped into a scene from a horror movie. I wanted to turn around and leave, but Kyle was already moving closer to the TV, drawn to it like a moth to a flame. "What the hell is this place?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Kyle didn't respond. His eyes were glued to the screen as if he were in a trance. Suddenly, the static on the screen began to shift, forming vague shapes that slowly came into focus. It was a live view of the hallway we just passed through. My heart skipped a beat as I stared at the screen. A blurry figure appeared at the edge of the frame, standing just outside the door we'd entered. "Kyle, we're kisters, do me to go," I said, my voice shaking, but Kyle didn't move. The figure on the screen began to move, its limbs jerking unnaturally, like a puppet controlled by invisible strings. The camera zoomed in, focusing on the door as the figure reached out and began to turn the knob. "Carl, now," I yelled, snapping him out of his trance. We dashed for the door, the temperature in the room seeming to drop as we did so. The short staircase that had been a short descent now seemed endless, each step stretching out before us like a never-ending tunnel. I glanced back, half expecting to see a figure behind us, but there was nothing, just a dark, empty hallway. When we finally burst through the door at the top, the school was eerily silent. The fire alarm had stopped, and the hallways were deserted. It felt like we had entered another world, where time had frozen and we were the only ones left. "Where is everyone?" Kyle whispered, his voice filled with fear. I answered, my heart pounding in my chest. "I don't know." We wandered through the halls, disoriented and panicked, trying to find our way back to reality. Every corner we turned seemed to lead to another dead end or an unfamiliar hallway. The school we had known for years had become a maze designed to trap. Finally, we found an exit and stumbled out into the cold air. The school campus was as usual, filled with students and teachers, but we felt different, changed by what we had seen. We never spoke of it again, not to each other or to anyone else. The memory of that day became a shadow that followed us, a constant reminder of the door we should never have opened. Story 3. The Bathroom Stalker. It was a dreary fall day, the kind that drags on, especially when you're 14 stuck in math class. The teacher was talking about equations that seemed to fade away, and all I could think about was the increasing need to use the bathroom. Finally, I raised my hand, and with a nod from the teacher, I grabbed the wooden board that served as a bathroom pass and slipped out of the classroom. The hallway was eerily quiet, with only the distant hum of other classrooms filling the silence. As I approached the main floor bathrooms, I saw a sign taped to the door, "Out of service. Please use the restrooms upstairs or downstairs." Sighing, I headed for the stairs, but before I could take a step, a man appeared beside me. He was older, with a wide smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Hey, do you know where the nearest bathroom is?" he asked. I pointed toward the stairs, muttering something about the bathroom being upstairs or downstairs, hoping he would leave me alone. He thanked me and started up the stairs, his footsteps echoing through the empty hallway. Something about him struck me as odd, but I ignored it. Maybe he was just a visiting parent, I told myself. To avoid any further interaction, I decided to head downstairs. This part of the school was deserted, save for the locker room and a rarely used bathroom. I pushed the heavy door open and found myself in complete darkness. The light in this bathroom was always off, a sign that it was rarely used. I stepped inside, my footsteps echoing on the cool tile floor, and headed for the stall. As I sat there, the sudden sound of a fire alarm tore through the silence, accompanied by a white strobe light that blinked rhythmically. My heart sank. A fire drill, and here I was, trapped in the bathroom. First, I debated whether to hurry up and run outside or just wait. The flashing lights disoriented me, the alarm muffled but loud enough to vibrate through the walls. Suddenly, the door creaked open, and the volume of the alarm spiked as someone entered the bathroom. I held my breath as I saw a pair of shoes stop just outside my stall. They stood there motionless. My heart pounded in my chest, and I tried to peer through the small crack in the bathroom door. That was when I saw it. A face pressed against the crack, one eye wide open, staring straight at me. It was the man in the hallway. A soft chuckle escaped his lips, and my blood ran cold. He crouched down, lowering his head until he was looking up at me from beneath the bathroom door. Before I could react, he ducked under the door and lunged at me, covering my mouth with one hand. I struggled, my mind racing with terror as he whispered, "Don't struggle, just relax." Panic surged through me. I was trapped and there was no one to help. The man's grip tightened and I felt tears well up in my eyes. But then, amid the shrill alarm, I heard another voice, someone screaming. The door swung open and the man loosened his grip as he turned to face the intruder. It was the principal. "Is anyone there?" The principal called, his voice trembling with urgency. I tried to scream, but the man's hand muffled my scream. The principal must have heard something because he rushed toward the counter. The man sprinted away, pushing the principal aside and disappeared into the hallway. The principal, an old man with gray hair, pulled me out of the room, his face pale with shock. He held me tight as I shook uncontrollably. "You're safe now," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. Later, as I walked to my parents' car, my friend stared at me with wide eyes, probably wondering why I looked so shaken. But I didn't care about the stares or the questions. All I knew was that if the principal hadn't arrived when he did, I might not have made it out of that bathroom. Years later, I learned that the principal had passed away, but I never forgot what he did for me that day. He was my hero, and his memory stayed with me long after I left that school.